Hello, my name is Kifa Isa. I'm sharing with you a quick overview on a new product concept that I have called edraj. I've been thinking of this product for a while now, and it essentially boils down to a content management system, but with some added features that make it more of information exchange and management platform, in the sense that it can host different types of content. So with classical content management system, you would mainly do textual content or articles. You would do multimedia. But with this one, you could also define custom data types and structures that would enable you to do various things with them. Like you could publish them, you could aggregate them in certain ways, and what have you. So first of all, it's going to be open source CMS engine, giving people option to do self-hosting. And with that, people also have the option to register their host instance to a central registry. This facilitates certain features like discoverability and message exchange. So it acts mainly like a dynamic DNS pointing to those instances. The product emphasizes the concept of a golden version of the data that is maintained strictly on the file system in the form of flat files in JSON format. Those JSON formatted files should follow a schema, so it's schemaless, sorry, schemaful, not schemaless. The schema is well defined as well. The data comes with metadata information around it that makes it more consumable or better consumable by systems and machines. And it's serviced through API. That makes it more of time-proof data because it doesn't follow a certain relational database layout. It actually all self-contained. Users and various actors in the system will be using PGP/GPG dual cryptography to sign activities and various requests. And so this actually reduces the emphasis on a login process. Once the user is provisioned to a system with their public key, then they can simply sign any request they want to accomplish and pass that request through API to the server. And the server will simply check, verify the authenticity of the request and execute. The content produced or curated by users is also protectable by ACL, access control lists, meaning that the users could limit access only themselves or to select individuals or make it public. If it's made public, users also have the option to publish this on the web. So the very server has a web interface that would service the content to other users through a URL, or of course would make the content visible to search engines as well for indexing. Users can follow updates and the introduction of additional content elements into the platform. And that follow process could also be limited by a filter. Say, for example, I want to follow someone, but only follow items that are tagged with technology, or items that are tagged with, I don't know, politics, or items that are tagged with jokes, as opposed to making the follow open to anything they produce. So this adds kind of more control and better management for the follow process. And then they could interact with the information items, like they could, of course, view, they could react, like, dislike, they could comment, they could share. And then users can exchange messages among themselves within a host or across the hosts by means of the root registry that I mentioned earlier. Users could write scripts that would allow them to integrate data, aggregate the data in certain ways, and also produce events upon certain conditions happening on the data. There will be the concept of modules, allowing developers to extend the features of the platform. So this is essentially an information management platform. The core components, first we have a schema repository. So a set of, by default, schema definitions or templates, if you may, for types of data that you could create. Then we have the content repository, which is the actual instantiation of the data or the creation of JSON entities according to the schema. With that comes a number of additional items, like, for example, you could have optional attachments, binary data like multimedia or documents or what have you. You could also manage the ACL, the access control list. You could view the change history, and you could also view the interactions with that data made by other users. The content itself can be organized arbitrarily in a folder structure. So you could have folders like, say, personal, blogs, spaces, what have you, to arrange your data. Identities repository is where you maintain your own set of identities. You could have more than one identity or sub-identities, where you maintain identities of your devices and applications that access your data, so that you, in this way, they are granted access to the data. And you could also manage the identity of other people. You can also group identities so that you can easily manage that groups through ACL. The system offers a messaging capability. So it's something between email and instant messaging. People could exchange messages across the realm. The newsfeed is essentially the aggregation of the new content introduced by users you follow. So this is mainly like a timeline or activity stream. Modules, we talked about that. Scripting, we talked about that. We also have the concept of indexing and caching to accelerate access to the data and accomplish certain features like reporting. But this should always be maintained separate from the golden data itself. And it can be or should be reconstructible whenever required by the user from scratch. The root edraj is the central repository for edraj hosts in terms of like providing name service capabilities. It also hosts modules with their versioning, etc. It hosts schema definitions, and it also offers a means to aggregate public content from various instances registered to it, and of course publish the users who would like to be publicized. So we would like to start soon, hopefully, with building a proof of concept or a prototype, which is going to be essentially a reference implementation. I plan to write it in plain PHP, leverage maybe a simple micro framework, and of course, need to leverage other PHP libraries. But the bottom line here is the code must be simple and shallow. The implementation will be iterative and incremental. So probably we'll start with, I don't know, 10% of the features and start growing that in iterations. It's going to be heavily test-driven. Authentication is going to happen through PGP and GPG. It's going to be strictly headless. So all capabilities should be provided through API. And then on the side, we could implement UI, whether it's web-based, whether it's mobile-based, whether it's desktop application, to actually interact with the API and offer the capabilities to end users. The content is essentially instantiation of data from the data structure definitions in the schema. So it could be as simple as text, stretch text, documents. It could be multimedia. It could be more structured data like events, contacts, messages, etc. JSON files must always comply to the respective JSON schema definition and will be regularly checked for integrity. The application, as we mentioned, can use indices and cache. We have also the concept of metadata envelope, which is essentially an additional set of metadata elements that would give more color to the data. So it will contain the signature. So the data itself is signed by the signer or the signatory. Tags, categories, change history, path on the file system, hashes of the data attachments, the various interactions that happen to this data, the access control rules set by the user. This is essentially what edraj is about. I look forward to tracking interest and look forward to also present you soon with a working prototype that would demonstrate those various ideas. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.